Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Friday, 16th May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Ukraine and Russia's peace talks remain unproductive, marked by disagreements. Initial discussions in Istanbul, the first in 3 years, quickly descended into disarray. Subsequent talks lasted less than 2 hours, with the Russian approach labeled unacceptable. Ukraine accused Russia of sabotaging negotiations with 11th-hour demands, while Moscow insisted on Kyiv's territorial concession. Despite ongoing lower-level talks, Putin declined the meeting with Zelensky. A potential peace summit in Turkey, potentially involving Putin, Zelensky, and Trump, faces uncertainty, with initial hesitations from Putin and Trump, though Trump later indicated possible attendance. These peace talks have been dismissed as theatrical, with unrealistic demands. Despite stalled negotiations, Moscow and Kyiv agreed on a 1,000-prisoner swap. Putin maintains control in Ukraine, showing no incentive to concede. Turning to the European Union, preparations are underway to impose fresh sanctions targeting Russia's financial sector in response to the ongoing war in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Germany is threatening tougher sanctions on Russia ahead of any potential peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. India's stock market faced a downturn on May 16th, with the Nifty 50 closing at 25,019 and the Sensex at 82,330.59, reflecting a 200-point decrease. Despite this, the BSE mid-cap and small-cap indices showed gains, and defense stocks such as Bharat Dynamics Limited, BDL, Bharat Electronics Limited, Bell, and iForge experienced increases due to heightened demand related to Operation Sindoor, leading analysts to recommend long-term investment opportunities in specific defense stocks. Rayo Vikas Nigam Ltd. (RVNL) also saw its shares jump by over 10% following a significant update to its order book. Earlier in the week, the NSE Nifty 50 index reached its highest point since October, buoyed by optimism surrounding a potential trade agreement with the United States following encouraging statements from Donald Trump. While Hyundai Motor India's Q4 net profit saw a slight decrease of 3.7% to ₹1,016.14.3 crore, its revenue grew by 1.5% year-over-year, and a dividend was announced. Experts predict a long-term decline in U.S. market dominance, positioning India as an attractive location for both capital and manufacturing. The CNBC Inside India newsletter indicated that investors are largely confident in India's economic underpinnings, but might be underestimating the geopolitical risks associated with the country's willingness to escalate conflict. Australia's stock market presented a mixed bag in May 2025, with the ASX 200 showing a general upward trend, gaining 0.6%, driven by robust mining sector results and encouraging us economic indicators. Shares in Australia saw a cautious rise, setting the stage for a potential surge, reflecting gains made on Wall Street. However, there were dips, with the S&P 200 index falling by 0.04%. Helia announced that CBA, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and its related entities now hold a significant stake. Meanwhile, the founder of Money of Mine severed connections with the company, causing instability. In other financial developments, Gina Rinehart, Australia's wealthiest woman, doubled her investments in stocks to $2.50 billion. The Vanguard Australian Shares Index ETF, ASVAS, was analysed as a possible passive income investment. The expanding cruise industry in Australia is fueling a greater need for specialised travel insurance offerings. NCI is prioritizing the examination of sector-specific sustainability risks within the Australian equity market. A charge against the CEO of Capricorn Metals was dismissed in court. This positive trend contrasted with a downturn in New Zealand's market. The United States and China have eased trade tensions with a temporary tariff reduction, providing relief for affected small businesses and boosting the S&P 500 for 4 days. The Trump administration had earlier advocated for reciprocal tariffs, particularly concerning China. While China has characterized trade talks with the U.S. as good, it has not commented on future actions. Former President Trump had hinted at a possible call with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. U.S. export restrictions have led NVIDIA to reconsider sending GPU designs to China after a new Shanghai center was reported. Applied Materials stock also declined due to lower sales in China. Despite positive trade discussions with the U.S., China's stock markets, including Hong Kong, have faced declines due to earnings reports and U.S. technology limitations. Boshan Haitian is planning to raise approximately $1 billion, and Cattle has secured $4.60 billion through listings in Hong Kong. Turning to India, the nation is contemplating lowering tariffs on U.S. goods in response to the U.S. push for reciprocal tariff. Following the U.S. and China's tariff pause, the United Kingdom quickly established a limited trade agreement with the Trump administration, raising questions about whether EU nations can follow suit. The United States is grappling with internal divisions regarding the export of advanced AI technology to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, driven by fears of potential misuse. In the United Arab Emirates, during a visit to the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi, former President Trump voiced support for expanding American AI exports. Subsequently, Saudi Arabia witnessed Saudi Aramco signing preliminary agreements with U.S. firms valued at potentially $90 billion to bolster economic collaboration. NVIDIA Corporation is also channeling chips to Saudi Arabia through an AI deal supported by Citi. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, PIF, is actively pursuing substantial investment agreements with U.S. asset managers and has cautioned against fraudulent schemes aimed at soliciting funds. Despite Trump's success in securing investment commitments in Saudi Arabia, breakthroughs in peace negotiations for Gaza and Ukraine have yet to materialize. Canada's S&P TEX Composite Index achieved a new intraday record, driving a positive trading session that concluded with a 0.8% increase. TEX futures mirrored this upward trend, buoyed by the main stock index's milestone. Market analysts are now actively assessing the Canadian stock market's potential trajectory following this achievement. Investors are encouraged to scrutinize specific stocks, particularly those priced under $50, while also considering dividend-yielding and recession-resistant options. An undervalued Canadian stock, currently down 17%, is being touted as a promising buy-and-hold investment. Moreover, Canada is emerging as a potential blueprint for the U.S. in establishing clear regulatory frameworks for cryptocurrencies. European markets closed higher on Friday, with Germany's DAX nearing record highs, contributing to a slightly positive week overall amid global economic uncertainties. The U.S. dollar and Treasury yields fell, while gold saw a nearly 1% drop and oil prices remained stable, even as European stock markets anticipated a surge in IPOs. Turning to the UK, Prime Minister Keir Starmer indicated that European leaders align with U.S. President Donald Trump's apprehensions regarding Russia's role in ceasefire discussions, signaling a coordinated international strategy. To address European regulatory concerns about competition, Microsoft has proposed separating its Office 365 and Microsoft 365 suites from its Teams communication app. The U.S. stock market showed mixed performance, with most stocks rising amid shifting economic data. While Friday saw a downturn, Wall Street indexes were on track for substantial weekly gains, supported in part by a trade ceasefire with China. Interest rates also shifted, as the average 30-year mortgage rate in the U.S. rose to 6.81%, the highest level since late April. Business travel to the U.S. declined by 9% in April, reflecting economic uncertainty and concerns over the Trump administration's trade and border policies. Meanwhile, Apar Industries, a small-cap stock, saw remarkable growth, increasing by 48% in May. This rebound from earlier losses was attributed to a strong performance in the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2025, spurred by increased domestic demand and revenue growth in the U.S. South Africa is seeing its rand strengthen as a potential new inflation strategy gains traction. This contrasts with difficulties in the food sector, highlighted by Tiger Brand's symbolic sale of its canned fruit operations for just R1. Meanwhile, the resale market for luxury goods is growing, reflecting a shift towards more conscious consumerism. Adding to the complex social landscape, Elon Musk's AI chatbot Grok, after an unauthorized alteration, made unsolicited statements about a white genocide narrative in South Africa, igniting debate. On a brighter note, a poignant story of loss in post-apartheid South Africa won the 2025 Deutsche Börse Photography Foundation Prize. Japan's economy has shrunk by 0.2% over the past year, its first contraction in 12 months, mainly because of declining exports. New economic data shows that sluggish consumer spending and falling exports are significantly impacting the economy, as President Trump's trade policies are expected to worsen this situation. Simultaneously, Japanese markets saw record foreign purchases of equities and bonds in April. However, some market analysts doubt this investment surge will continue. TradingView indicates that Japan is experiencing record fund inflows as investors move assets from the U.S. market due to tariff threats initiated by the Trump administration. Russia recently engaged in direct peace talks with Ukraine, marking the first such interaction in 3 years. Following this, President Trump indicated his intention to meet with Putin shortly after the Russian leader's absence from those discussions. In a significant shift within the military, Putin reassigned the commander of Russia's ground forces to the Security Council. Simultaneously, Russia is anticipating stronger ties with Vietnam, spurred by President Lam's recent Eurasian tour, further escalating international pressure. The European Union has agreed upon a 17th set of sanctions targeting Russia. Turning to the United States, President Trump has accused James Comey of essentially calling for his assassination, citing an 8,647 Instagram post as evidence. Qatar recently hosted former President Trump, who notably admired the nation's elite camels. He stated his appreciation, noting their exceptional quality. Pakistan is extending its ceasefire agreement with India until May 18th, observing a continued truce. However, stock market data from Shenzhen and Mumbai has raised questions about Pakistan's claims of victory in a recent 4-day aerial conflict. Economically, Pakistan has introduced its first green sukuk, worth Rs 30 billion, to fund renewable energy projects. A collaboration between Mind Hive and the Al-Khidmat Foundation is also underway, launching Pakistan's first multi-sector AI project to tackle social issues. To bolster international relations, the chairman of Pakistan's Senate is in Moscow, seeking to deepen cooperation between Pakistan and Russia in key industries. Taiwan's stock market saw investors pulling back from electronics, causing a minor dip overall. However, Morgan Stanley noted significant improvements in Taiwan's data for April, highlighting NVIDIA. Stanley Druckenmiller's Duquesne Capital Management trimmed its Alphabet shares, but boosted its stakes in Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing, TSMC, and Coupang. Economically, Fitch Ratings is considering downgrading Taiwan's life insurers because of the local currency's strength. Furthermore, Taiwan and the United States recently held discussions regarding tariffs in South Korea. The United States is working with the United Arab Emirates on a framework for Abu Dhabi to access advanced American-made chips. This collaboration aims to balance technological cooperation with national security concerns. Shifting to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government is facing increasing pressure to address rising inflation. The Bank of Canada is closely monitoring economic indicators and considering further measures to curb price increases. The government is also debating fiscal policies to alleviate the burden on citizens without fueling inflation. Japan's economic performance disappointed as GDP contracted by 0.2%, missing projected targets. Trade optimism between the US and China seemed to fade, negatively influencing Asian equities. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong experienced a significant drop, compounded by disappointing earnings from Alibaba. Meanwhile, the Nikkei in Japan also registered a decrease. Trading activity remained confined within a tight range throughout the Asian markets. South Korea is currently pursuing trade negotiations with the United States to mitigate or remove existing tariffs. Representatives from South Korea, including those affiliated with the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC, formally requested discussions with U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer during a recent meeting held within South Korea, specifically to address these tariff concerns. Shifting to investment news within the nation, Greystar has established a new operational platform in South Korea, appointing Young-Wan Kang to serve as its country head, signaling increased foreign investment. United States cable giants Charter and Cox are seeking antitrust approval for a massive $34.50 billion merger. This merger would establish one of the largest television and internet providers in the nation. Elsewhere, the Trump administration's policies have inadvertently fueled a global recruitment drive targeting American researchers. Cuts to U.S. research institutions are prompting other countries to actively woo these scientists. This is seen as a major opportunity for other nations to experience a potentially historic brain gain. Germany's Chancellor Merz has voiced support for the finance minister's critique of Unicredit. The ongoing rearmament efforts in Germany are being viewed by some as a potentially beneficial war dividend for the economy. Meanwhile, a vital part of Germany's auto industry, currently facing difficulties, has considerable business operations located in the UK, however. Any prospective agreement may not significantly enhance the firm's financial standing. This situation is connected to the wider discussions surrounding a potential UK-US trade agreement. Vietnam has given the green light to a substantial $1.50 billion project spearheaded by the Trump Organization in collaboration with a local Vietnamese entity, aimed at constructing golf courses, hotels, and residential properties. In a move towards strengthening regional ties, Vietnam also elevated its diplomatic relationship with Thailand to a strategic partnership. Expanding its logistical footprint, Shine, the global online retailer, is establishing a significant warehouse in Vietnam, a strategic decision designed to offset potential disruptions arising from ongoing trade disputes between the United States and China. Singapore's OCBC plans to maintain its presence in Hong Kong and continue hiring despite ongoing trade tensions. The government of Singapore also acquired a 0.88% stake in JSW Infrastructure for Yacht 531 crore, demonstrating its investment interests abroad. Meanwhile, in Romania, interest rates remain on hold as the country approaches a tightly contested presidential runoff election. Shifting to Iran, hopes for a new nuclear deal are contributing to falling oil prices. This potential agreement could significantly impact global oil supplies. France is contemplating social media restrictions amid rising unemployment, which reached 7.4% in early 2025, signaling potential policy shifts to address economic challenges. Similarly, Spain and Greece are also considering implementing restrictions on social media usage, reflecting a growing trend in Europe. Over in Brazil, Thaw secured $1.90 billion in funding, paving the way for its exit from Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Furthermore, President Lula has extended an invitation to Vladimir Putin to engage in discussions with Ukraine, highlighting Brazil's potential role in international diplomacy. In Thailand, recent earthquakes have heightened concerns about building safety, leading tenants to show a preference for low-rise office spaces. Regarding international relations, a trilateral meeting involving Turkey, Russia, and Ukraine has concluded, focusing on possible peace negotiations between Moscow and Kyiv. The specifics of the meeting remain undisclosed. Turning to Azerbaijan, Tokyo stocks closed mixed. Weak performance from exporters was offset by buying activity, driven by strong earnings reports. Hong Kong and Kuwait are strengthening their relationships, focusing on finance, trade, and innovation to bolster economic ties. Finally, Estonia reported that Russia dispatched a jet following an attempt to intercept a ship allegedly violating sanctions, escalating tensions between the two nations. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.